45, so are y'all ready to get started?
And I guess that's right.
All right.
All right. So, hello everyone and everyone out there. Therese Faison, Chief Academic Officer. We appreciate everyone joining us today for our curriculum committee meeting. We have what we think is a full and exciting agenda. And I just want to remind the public that if ever there's anything that you want to see us discuss, you can always shoot myself, Ms. Jawal, or Ms. Bradford an email. And I'm going to just turn it over to Ms. Bradford so she can say hello as well.
Hi. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, just so that, you know, and I know a little bit about you because I watched the last meeting. So those of you who are here, I know a little bit. My qualifications for being here. I got a bachelor's of art and a bachelor of science teaching. I've taught a number of subjects in volunteering and through paid jobs, and I became a guardian ad litem in 2006. So my commitment to children and the poor has been very strong ever since then. I am probably the only sitting board member with learning disability. You would label me with dyslexia if you were labeling me. I don't believe in labels, but I do struggle with hand-eye coordination, and I see in pictures. So some of the way y'all are teaching, I really, really love. And I have a day job, so I work full-time, and that tempers the way I look at things from this board standpoint. And I appreciate teachers. I really appreciate teachers. I got an email this week from somebody that said, "We heard you blah, blah, blah." And I said, no, absolutely not. I'm here to support our teachers. I'm here to support our learning. I'm here to support our children. I will be voting in that direction every single time. So thank you for having me as part of your committee.
Thank you for being here. So our agenda today, we're going to cover some advanced academic data, which had been requested by this committee. Then we'll have an overview of our literacy intervention plan, and we'll talk a little bit about the literacy adoption process for a potential new ELA curriculum. And we've got some decisions to make as a committee to go through for that. We do have two leaders who are currently leading letters training. So if we might have to switch the adoption and the intervention piece if they are still wrapping up letters at that time, but hopefully they are on their way. So I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Meehan to start, and I will bring the clicker over to you.
I'll need you halfway.
Are you here to stand? You're in stage.
Before we got into some of the data to show, we wanted to celebrate the AP teachers that had students scoring 3 and above. So you'll see up there
a lot of names.
Teachers
Yes.
from across the district. So based on what the board asked us to bring, we have some data to look at. I did I left it up there for you to grab on the way in. If you didn't get it, it is up at the sign-in table. When we look at this, what do we see in the data that?
Yeah, and I just want to start by saying, so the left-hand column is our AP enrollment. So those are students who are taking our advanced placement courses, and then the right-hand side is our dual enrollment. So those are kids that are taking courses at a variety of institutions at the collegiate level. So give you a minute to look at the data. Do you need a paper? I can see it. Okay. Any noticings or wonderings from the committee members? Ms. Meehan, do you want to share some of the things that we talked about with the high school principals?
We had talked about this at the last principals meeting, and some of the things that are glaring to us is the disproportionality in demographics and courses taken at the AP level, and then those students taking dual enrollment classes for college credits. So in response to the data, we're using top 10% identification at all levels, meaning we're taking subgroup data now, not just the whole school population. We're taking subgroups. We're looking for those students from the different subgroups as to who's excelling, and then that is used now as a data point for identification. We're looking at vertical alignment, meaning it is not only the high school's responsibility for these scores. You know, it's gotta bring it back to elementary. What are we doing to add rigor to the curriculum? What are we doing to prepare them for the AP exams, the ACT exams that they're taking? And then we have, currently we have 2 high school specialists that share 2 of the traditional schools. We have one that shares Laney and New Hanover High School, and one that shares Ashley and Hoggard. And they are developing AP score reports, and then teachers of AP classes can also log in and use their own individual score reports. So there's been professional development given or provide opportunities provided to the teachers to learn how to use those reports to help the different students in the classes. They've developed AP PLCs where AP teachers come together to see how they can best improve scores and meet the needs of the students in their classes. We have NC AP partnership, AP professional development given by the state. They're offering free professional development that we've encouraged our AP teachers to take. And then they also develop an AP App Potential report. And what this is they take data from pre-ACT, pre-SAT, and they're able to intentionally disaggregate the data to see what students in those subgroups would benefit most from those AP classes. And then they send a letter home, and it outlines which ones, based on the data, they would be most successful in. So they list the 4 top ones, and then other ones that, you know, may be of interest related to those subject areas. They also share this report with the teachers, and not only the AP teachers, but honors and regular as well, because they may be in those honors or regular level classes, and the more encouragement these students can get to take those courses, the better.
Can I jump in real quick, Ms. Meehan? I just also want to add to that, you know, we've got elementary and middle school principals here too, and so the conversation when the high school principals saw this was really, you know, how have we built an on-ramp for them to be successful in these classes so that they want to enroll in these classes? Because it's, you know, it's a twofold process. The kids have to opt into the class, and so they have to know that they're going to feel successful. And then once they're in the class, they have to know that these supports are here from them from these AIG specialists who support our high school. So we're trying to think of some of the supports we can give them as what are we doing before they get there, and then how do we support them once they're there as well. So definitely open to the committee's feedback on other ideas that we have to make sure that we're getting the on-ramp there and then getting them the support they need once they're in the class.
And additionally, and we're in the process of it, our high school specialists go to the middle schools and they develop their 4-year blueprint, which kind of outlines the type of classes that they'll take in order to be most successful. And they do that with the AIG identified students but additionally, our middle school specialists are looking at data they have to encourage those students from all subgroups performing at, the top 10 to 20% to take those honors level and then encourage them to, in the future, take those AP. And we also do a shared document between the middle school specialists and the high school specialists and counselors that have those students on the radar in the talent pool at the high schools so they could continuously be encouraged to take those higher level courses. We have, the AIG program has purchased AP prep books for students. One problem we're seeing is in those one semester AP courses, if they're taking them in the fall semester, they're not taking the exams until May. So how are we bridging that, and getting them to prepare for those AP courses?
Ms. Meehan, can I ask the question? It sounds like you guys are doing this. I just want to, so my thought was, first of all, I love to hear the things that we're doing. And I was thinking, with our specialists, and you might be doing this, I hear that the specialists are going down to the middle school and they're kind of making a plan. And I guess my question would be, and I kind of think you might already be doing this, are the specialists looking at students to get them, okay, what are these kids, who are the kids that we can get to the honors class? And then we're preparing them, looking at that data, and we're making a plan, like mapping out for them if they begin here to get them there. And I think if you actually meet with the students and the parents, inform them and map this plan out and make it, not to say we can't get out of it, but let them know this is the goal, that it will be more concrete. Are we doing something like that? If not, think about that so we can actually do that. Because if you come to me as a student and you say, I see potential in you, okay, so this is how we're gonna start you and where we're gonna have you, but this is where you're gonna go. And I'm gonna have all this support in place for you because I love the support we have here. My question would be, what support do we have for those kids as we're trying to get them there?
Right, so that shared document is one way we're trying to keep the communication,
Right.
From middle school to the high school. And then the counselors do a really great job of, they mostly run the high school registration for our 8th graders. And that's where the communication really starts as far as continuing to push them into more rigorous classes, the honors, the AP.
I was just wondering if our specialists, since we are fortunate to have those specialists at the school, if they can make some touch points, because we've got some good specialists at the school, right? So if they can make touch points, like they make touch points for the current AIG students and AP students, if they can make some touch points with these kids and have those conversations, I just would throw that out.
Yeah.
And I would tag on to that, and also, explaining why. No child wants to be told, you're going to have to do a little bit harder work, and we're going to expect a little more out of you. You need the carrot at the end of it. If you do this, this is
Here's
what
the
the benefit
credits.
to you is going to be.
Correct.
Good point.
And you're
Very
doing
good
that
point.
with the, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. I wrote this down because I was going to forget. And those celebration teachers, those teachers that we know are, not to say they're the only ones, but they're pushing their kids and they're getting those 3s to 5s. I would just remind us, how are we utilizing them to support others?
Right, and all of those teachers, that's part of what the high school specialists are doing. They don't teach only AP courses,
Right.
most of them. So they're looking for those kids in their other classes as well. So it's really a communication, everyone's working together to try to find those students that are not enrolled in the higher level courses that really need to be for their own well-being.
I think what we've seen, I'm looking at our data for AP and Cape Fear Community College. And we've got low numbers, but I can almost, to the 18 that we've got that are in Cape Fear classes and the 13 that are taking AP, I'm almost positive that every single one of them are they're in our stay cohort. And so, I'm wondering if we don't need to collaborate with AIG and stay at the middle school level to kind of set that up so that, because those are the students that are going to be taking those Cape Fear classes.
Very good idea.
They're getting those skills coming from middle school to high school, and they're staying in stay in high school, and then they're going to be ready. So expanding that stay program to be larger than what we've got right now, I think is what's going to help to build some of those numbers.
Yep.
Can I ask a
And
question?
also with, ESL, I think with collaborating at the middle school level with those ESL teachers to start to develop some of those skills and identifying those students is what's going to set us up at the high school level. So they'll be taking those honors level and be ready to take the college courses.
Can you educate in about a minute or two those people who don't know what stay is that are listening?
So STAY is striving to achieve excellence. These are maybe middle of the road students that do not, maybe they're first in their families to go to college or have that goal to go to college. And so the program is built to provide them with some support academically with tutors and taking some field trip experiences to community colleges and universities to give them those experiences that will lead them to having that desire to move forward with taking honors level and AP classes.
And my understanding is that that's currently just at the high schools. I don't think we have that at the middle schools. Does anybody know if that's correct?
We've had it to a varying degree at different middle schools.
Okay.
It really requires a teacher to take that on. But yeah, when I was at Williston, we certainly had a little bit more of a state program that fed into New Hanover.
Yeah,
And
I know
Sarah-
I think that's a great collaboration idea, for sure.
Murray had it, I know, leading to Ashley. So we've got it.
Great idea.
It's got, varying levels at different middle schools.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
And Sarah Jelinski and I did a Zoom call, at the very beginning of this school year, it might have been the end of the summer, beginning of the school year, with, New Hanover had a big, group there, and Angela Jeffrey was in that as well. But really trying to, what you're saying, trying to build that relationship between the two programs, because it's a great feeder,
I also wonder about getting some AP students to come talk to our middle schoolers, right? There's something about hearing it from a teacher, I see potential in you, but there's something about hearing it from other kids too, right? Like, this is what it looks like to be in these classes, this is the kind of experiences you get to have. I know we do that sometimes middle school to elementary to get excitement for different, for orchestra or whatever, so maybe that is a potential opportunity.
They gotta see people like them that are seeing success.
Yep.
To buy in.
And I think as we think about our strategic plan goal of growing the number of students who are getting 3 through 5, part of that is getting our enrollment up, right? We want as many students as possible from all demographics to be able to get in and succeed in those courses. So.
But I think a good point is having a variety of students that represent all the different subgroups to inform the younger kids. We're in the midst of making videos for rising freshmen for the high schools and doing it with the specialty programs and, the specialty schools, meaning Isaac Bear, Wilmington Early College. And also for the 5th graders coming to middle school, what's it gonna look like? It's where the AIG program is doing it, but we're really trying to make it a more generalized, so it's not like you have to be identified AIG to go to these types of courses or, get involved in the middle school competitions that are available or the high school AP dual enrollment. Any other questions on that? Next, we're looking at ACT data. So I'll give you a minute to look at that.
For our elementary folks who are here, do you need a little refresher on ACTs? Yeah, maybe just like a 1 minute
Oh,
refresher on.
And we also do, pre-ACTs are given to all 10th graders. So that is actually used as a screener for our high school specialists. They use that as a screener to get students. They're looking at that as well for the top 10, top 20% of the different subgroups to get them in. But like the SAT, the ACT is I don't know if it, achievement
Standardized,
test
yeah.
that is used by colleges for admission. Lately, it hasn't been used since COVID, but I'll be surprised if it doesn't come back. Any other questions about what the ACT is? So we see the same type of data in these numbers as we did in our AP dual enrollment numbers. And what we're trying to do, again, is get those students better prepared to take the assessment. So our county has a Castle Learning online test.
You want to flip to the
Oh.
next?
Thank you.
Yep.
Preparation course that students can take. I know at some of the schools, the AIG specialists are using that, flex period. They call it different. I think most of them call it flex period. To pull some of those students in and work with them. On ACT, you can actually go into the individuals can go in to their scores and see which areas they need the most work in, which ones have strengths, which ones, we want to look at their weaknesses to address those. And it actually, you can build a test preparation specific to the student for them to do. So they're working on the skills that are lacking most in their pre-ACT courses. We've also ordered ACT prep books for all of the high schools, traditional and non-traditional. And we're using, like I said, the screener. And again, we go back to that vertical alignment. How are we preparing all students to excel in ACT, SAT, AP, honors, in all of these higher level opportunities?
I think for me, thinking of the vertical alignment, right, we teach them math since the time they're in pre-K all the way up, right? The language arts is there, the writing is there, and so making sure that information is really solidified for them so that they can show that their learning can be transferable to a test that has some more critical thinking components.
And
too.
as a whole department, the curriculum and instruction, our whole team is really working on getting those teachers together. What are you teaching to, and having them see it as a growing, evolving opportunity to add rigor. And maybe where we may be missing certain things or overlapping, teaching the same thing in different grades. Any questions on this?
Thoughts? Any other thoughts on the ACT data or questions?
No, I think that we've got to utilize some of the resources we've got more than we're utilizing them right now. The Castle Learning at the high school level, I think we know we've had it, but I don't know that we are maximizing it, whether it's in flex or in those English and math classes. I think we've just got to be more intentional about it. On the EOCs, if we're not intentional about preparing for those and strategizing on how to dissect a question, we're not going to do too well. If we don't do the same thing for the ACT, we're not going to do as well. For many of those kids that don't have the goal for college and wanting to make the 31 through 35 on the ACT, we've got to kind of weave it in and practice it and teach it if we're going to see some more success for some of those other students.
Go ahead, Mr. Rose.
So going back a little to the AP and dual enrollment, this talks about the enrollment data. Do we know what I'll call it proficiency data is for both of those, or the pass rate for each of those? I'm thinking if let's say we have a larger percentage of students that are being proficient when they take AP as compared to dual enrollment, or vice versa, it would help a little bit. I'm thinking at the middle school level, start to think about those pathways, because I want to set my students up for success. And if we're seeing more success in one area than the other, because both of them, basically are, as I understand it, are earning a college credit just in two different ways. I don't know which one is we're getting a bigger bang for the buck, so to speak.
You don't have to pass
that's a great
the
question.
AP test to get credit if you do CCP.
I see more kids in some ways are veering towards the Cape Fear classes. The rigor may not be, doesn't seem to be that, shouldn't be that way, but it is in many cases. The rigor for an AP course, because of the writing, I think, that's involved, is higher level, and some kids are shying away from it. And I can just tell you from my experience with my own taking it right now, man, he is working his tail off right now in an AP class.
Yeah. I mean, you can see the numbers for the most part. You have a lot more kids that are, even in those subgroups, that are, taking the dual enrollment as compared to AP.
Yeah.
I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's just
Right.
it was a question I
comparison.
had.
Yeah, I also wonder too, really having conversations with kids, from counselors, from principals, from teachers about, why are you earning the credit, right? Is it to earn the credit just to get it, or is it this class is also preparing you to be successful in your other collegiate classes? Like, I think they both have pros and cons, depending on the individual student's outcome. So that individual support to make those decisions is imperative.
I would also go back to what the classes look like and the rigor in the classes, because I think about when going back to my own personal kids when they took AP courses, and one was very successful because he could read and write and it's going to be fine, and then that other was not. Is when it comes to the test, he's successful in the class. So I would say too, what are we doing? It goes back to helping our teachers to do that student discourse, because the thought process of really digging into that content and understanding, because AP is it's based on critical thinking no matter what the subject is, right? So to do this and have the back and forth and prove my point with you, it's so powerful in my thought process, and then I can take that and put it on paper and I'm more successful. So I think we're gonna have to think about how we're presenting and teaching these courses, because it is kids leading right to go to the dual enrollment, because I can get the credit no matter what there. But so we have to really think about what the course looks like on campus. So that's what I would say. We have to help our teachers to think differently about how it's presented, to make sure they're getting the knowledge. Whereas when you go to a college course, let's be honest, the professor can do this all day long. And as long as you can check your boxes and do what you need to do, you're going to be successful. But with AP, I've got to really get it here to translate it over and apply it. So I think we need to look at that.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely have to develop arguments.
Right.
And that's that critical thinking.
That's that critical thinking for that.
They've got to be able to do it in that AP class.
Yeah.
And I don't,
Especially on that writing component of the AP tests.
Well,
Yeah, which ties right back to the ACT test too. You gotta
Right.
have a strong rating to get past that.
I'm new to this county, so my background comes from Wake. And one of the things you brought up earlier about students that take AP in the fall, a lot of them have combined, a lot of schools in Wake combine two AP classes and do AP days
Yeah.
and make it year-long, so they take it the whole time. The other thing is with high school semesters ending mid-late January, even the ones take it in the spring have a very short window before they have to take the AP exam. They don't even have, what, like half a semester. So that's something else to think about.
And another thing, when we're looking at the data that Mr. Broadfoot brought up, is dual enrollment classes, the Cape Fear, the whatever higher ed classes they're taking, there's a much greater variety of classes that they can choose from. So it's not only those students that are, trying to take an American history course for college credit. It's the students taking carpentry or, something like that. So it is, it's a different, it's not apples to apples.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It's
And
a
I
very
was
good
going to
point.
ask about, where's the career readiness aspect of what we're talking about for the ones who don't plan to go on to college?
yeah, and that's where I think we're needing to look at, and this goes with our CTE curriculum and setting them up to take classes, whether it's on campus or off campus, based on what their interests are. But there are, whether it's cosmetics and beauty, I think setting them up for that and internships is what, the Cape Fear classes really offer that, I think, but we've got to set them up with the CTE classes that we're, having them take, and the pathways we've got them taken at the high school level.
The career development coordinators at all the schools meet with every student to create a career plan, and they go over CCP and the pathways that Cape Fear with them when they do that.
Don't we have a couple of high schools, because I know I was pushing to, can we get more AP at the CTE level? Don't we have a couple of high schools that maybe have some computer science or something? One, okay. But
Would the committee be interested in our next meeting, having a presentation from you and some of the CT folks about kind of what that looks like?
Sure.
So we can definitely get that on the agenda for next time if that's something that we're interested, not to put you on the spot here, but I think if there's interest there, that'd be great to know more about that.
Yeah, we're meeting with principals now about pathways for next year, and I think Hoggard and Ashley are the only two with AP Computer Science, which again, coming from Wake, just floored me because everybody has it. My school, we had 3 teachers and all they taught was AP Computer Science.
and that's something we're working on.
Yeah.
But because we have to do those offerings.
And to be honest, that AP Computer Science Principles course is the easiest AP course out there,
Right. And then you get an AP credit.
bar none.
And just to, I don't know if we said this, and if we do, I apologize for the parents listening out there, AP credit, if normally, most colleges take 4s and, I shouldn't say most, 4s and 5s, a significant amount take. You do have some to do 5s. They're rare, very rare for somebody to take a 3, but you walk in with college credit, right? So that's why we're really pushing that, and that's why we're really pushing for our students to be successful with that 4 and 5 level for AP, because that's a credit they're walking in with. They're walking in with credit.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna switch our conversation. Thank you, Ms. Meehan, for sharing that data with us, and I'm gonna pass it over to Ms. Boer and Ms. Hill to give us an overview of our literacy intervention plan.
Yeah, good afternoon. We're excited to share about the literacy intervention plan that we've created for our district. It will encompass some of the requirements from DPI, but also the additional measures that we've put in as a district to support literacy across K-5. And this first slide just shows you where to get our literacy plan, because it is posted on our website. And so if you go under that literacy tab on the main website, you'll see that the first link is our district literacy plan. And through that, you'll see our core plan, which I'll speak about, and our K-3 intervention matrix as well, which Ms. Boer will speak about as well. So just some background on the literacy intervention plan. This is all part of Senate Bill 387, and this was passed in the spring of 2021. And it really, this bill encompasses so many pieces that is affecting our elementary literacy instruction in really positive, productive ways. If I could tell you how much we appreciate this bill, it would be an understatement, because I really think that it's aligning and supporting the work that we had started in New Hanover County, but it's giving us the funding and also just really kind of the push to keep moving in that direction. So we're really appreciative of all that this bill encompasses. But just so you know, this bill it gave us a definition of the science of reading. We hear a lot about the science of reading, but it gave us a clear definition, so across the state, we would all kind of be on that same level playing field. It is the reason that we're all participating in the LETRS professional development, and that's from pre-K, and all of our K-5 teachers as well, our elementary EC, our EL or ML teachers, and our administrators, our elementary administrators are participating in this course. So we were a part of the first cohort. We chose to be a part of the first cohort in our district because we knew we couldn't wait. We know that for our students to be able to be readers, that is life-changing for them. And in our district, we take that very seriously. The strategic plan goal, you'll hear me speak about that today as well, but that 90% of our third graders reading at or above grade level is absolutely possible here in New Hanover County, and we're getting closer every single year when it comes to that. And this literacy plan is giving us the focus, but even more importantly, the funding from the state to complete this work. And so LETRS is one piece of it, but what I like about that is because we're going to talk about programs, and there are programs that support us, but it is the teacher that makes the difference, and making sure that every classroom has a highly qualified teacher in their classroom. And unfortunately, our undergrad programs are not preparing them, and so LETRS is giving our teacher that knowledge. And today in our district, we had 15 LETRS sessions happening. So we just came from LETRS year one with all of our new staff. We had 89 participants in that session, and so it's just really exciting to hear the takeaways that they're getting from this course. And then the other pieces is that along with this bill, it aligned literacy curriculum with Read to Achieve, which we hear a lot about, RTA camp. It gave us some more alignment for that. DPI also created some literacy instructional standards, and those are just guides for best practices when it comes to literacy instruction. And that wasn't just K-5, that was K to 12. And so we've taken a look at those literacy instructional standards this year and how our district aligns with those as well. But today we're going to focus on that last bullet, and that last bullet is the literacy intervention plan. And within that, we had to share what is our core plan in our district, what are our guideposts when it comes to K-3 instruction, and then how are we supporting interventions for our students who are not on grade level? What supports are we offering them? And so while DPI and legislation requires us to define this for K-3, we as a district said we've got to do it K-5. If we're going to talk about elementary literacy, it doesn't stop in third grade. We've also got to address the needs in 4-5. So we'll talk about what we've done to support that as well.
So once Maureen and I were able to work with the state and learn about the legislative requirements and what we needed to do, we decided that, you know what, we can't do this work alone. We have so many valuable people in our buildings that we wanted to create a team. So we created a team. It was about 15, 18 people. We had principals on that team. We had NTSS coordinators. We had instructional coaches, and we had school psychologists, because we wanted to make sure that our plan was really all-encompassing and really supporting our students. So we did that. And then from that, we kind of had some guiding work that we wanted to do within that team. The first and most important thing was to create that district literacy intervention plan, which included our core plan as well. We wanted to make sure that it was grounded in the science of reading. It aligned with the MTSS framework across our district. But it also included reading camp. And that's so important because when our students, we invest a lot of money in reading camp. And when our students go, we want to make sure that that work that they're getting is continuing from the school year. And then we're monitoring that growth from the school year to the summer, then to the next school year. So we also wanted to make sure that we aligned what the state calls individual reading plans to our current practices, which is our MTSS problem-solving tool. We wanted to make sure it had all the components. We had a great system in place, and it did have all of those components, but we just wanted, me personally, I wanted extra eyes looking at what it said needed to be in place and what we had in place. And then,
Will you guys introduce yourselves?
Oh,
And
so
whenever
sorry.
whenever anybody else makes a comment, just tell us who you are before you make it. Just this it. We forgot to do that. So whenever you
Oh,
speak
we did
again, let
forget to
them
do
know.
that.
But if you guys will let everybody know, because I'm sitting here looking like they are some experts and they don't know who they are, but please tell them who they are.
I am so sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm Jen Boer. I support MTSS for the entire district. So the implementation of MTSS, I support that framework. I do pre-K through 12th grade.
And I'm Maureen Hill. I'm the lead ELA teacher for elementary, so I support K-5.
And then getting back to this, the last thing we wanted to make sure was that we identified the resources for our literacy interventions that were grounded in the science of reading. Prior to this work, our district had great systems in place. Our elementary schools had MTSS intervention matrices, but our district hadn't invested specific money into intervention materials into our elementary schools. And because of the bill and the money that came along with it, we were able to say, these are things we know that all of our schools have in place. So these are things that we can say can be utilized within our plan. So what we did is we had our schools fill out a survey and say, okay, tell us what you're using for your literacy interventions. We created themes from that, and then we also looked to see where the holes were. So that was some of the work that the district team did to get this work up and running and start.
Before we jump in, I just want to give an opportunity for questions, anything that's coming up as people are listening. Okay.
So I think it's important to know that also, we made sure that our interventions and our core instruction, it aligns with the science. So we talk about that common definition of the science of reading. We're making sure that what we're giving teachers and what teachers have available to them in their schools also aligns with the research and the science, so that teachers aren't learning something in letters and then not having a resource to support that in the classroom. And it's been
I
really...
see some head nodding from our elementary principals.
It's been really exciting because truly, we've had a lot of teacher voice. So, and that's the whole point of letters, is to empower our teachers to have the knowledge to advocate for themselves and for their students based on the research. And so teachers came to us during this process and said, we don't have enough for phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is something that our phonics program touches on, but it's not explicit and systematic. And so one of the things that came out of this was that we decided we needed to purchase Haggerty, which is a phonemic awareness program. And we bought it for all of our K-3 teachers this year and got them training. And so it's exciting to have our teachers also sharing what their needs. And so one thing, so on the screen is the core instruction plan. You guys also have it in the packet in front of you. And so this is the one that we had to turn in and submit to DPI. And like we said, this is tied to funding, and so this had to get approval. So we submitted this for the first time in June, or I can't even remember, but in June of 2021. And then we submitted it again in September or August of 2022, and that provided a significant amount of funding for us to be able to purchase the things that are listed in this plan. And also, we get feedback from DPI on that plan, and I'm going to humble brag on our team because our plan, we get detailed feedback on every single section from DPI, and truly our feedback were compliments. We were told that we were headed in the right direction, that we're using our money wisely, that we're thinking about the needs of our students. And so we're just really proud that it's not a Boer and I thing. That is a team. That was a team approach, and the team truly led that. So
the state also invited her to come present at a state conference because of the work that the team did.
we're just very excited because truly, like I said, there's so much potential in our district. Our students, we believe that their potential is limitless. And I'm just really excited because we know that literacy is a human right, that our students have to be able to read, to function as adults, whatever they choose, college, career, whatever it might be. And so we want to make sure that every student that walks into New Hanover County Schools comes out better, and more importantly, comes out literate. And so that's truly the goal. So when we take a look at our core instruction plan, you'll just see mapped out, the way the core instruction plan works is we had to identify the environment, the curriculum, and the instruction. And this mirrors our problem-solving tool that our teachers actually in our schools go through BOY, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year through through the NTSS process. And so if you just take a look at that, for K2, we said that there would be a 120-minute literacy block in our schedule, and that would include whole group and small group instruction. And we tried to give kind of bare minimums because we also know that we need to be responsive to needs. And we also know that every school in our district is very different, and the needs of our students are different. And so some schools may need more support when it comes to foundational skills, phonemic awareness, and phonics. And so while we said there's a minimum of 30 minutes, that aligns with the science, it aligns with the fidelity of the program, but we also know some schools need 45 minutes of that. And so we are giving that guidance that, especially in K2, foundational skills come first in your block, and so that's 30 to 45 minutes of explicit instruction happening in your classroom. And we use Foundations, which is a multi-sensory phonics program, and it's explicit and systematic, and it builds upon each other. And we actually use Foundations pre-K through 3rd grade, and that really makes us different from a majority of other districts. One, pre-K is exposing our students to the letters and the letter sound so that they're ready, they're kindergarten ready. But we added 3rd grade last year because of the effects of the pandemic. We knew our 2nd graders were not strong in their foundational skills, and we had to extend that into 3rd grade. And actually, 3rd grade Foundations is so wonderful. I can't see us stepping back away from that.
I want to open the floor up if anybody from our elementary side over here, I'm pointing, y'all are kind of sitting together over here. If y'all have anything you want to add or say about, the experience of how this has looked in your classrooms and schools, and anything to add to the fabulous work that's already happening. Okay.
Just other than just to say, again, accolades to this,
Yeah.
this group of people right here, because they have definitely worked, and oh, by the way, I'm Jordan Steinhober, I'm principal at Alderman.
Thanks, Robin.
They have worked hand in hand with our teachers and truly in collaboration to meet the diverse needs of our schools, and knowing that we are all coming from different places, our students are coming from different places, but making sure that whatever we are doing, we're doing it in a way that is most effective for them. And so, individualizing what it looks like at Alderman versus what it looks like at Castle Hayne, Holly Tree, whatever, and taking all the things that are in this plan and putting them into practice has not been easy, and it's definitely kudos to the teachers for taking new things on and new things on and new things on, but that they have been continually doing it and going back and reflecting and getting better. I've watched this process over the last few years and watching it through COVID, and now, like for example with 3rd grade, I mean, it's absolutely amazing seeing those 3rd grade teachers embrace things like Foundations that otherwise was like, oh well, that's that's for K2, that's for K2. Not anymore, and they realize that, they understand that, and they're doing great things. Great things.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. So phonics is a minimum of 30 minutes, but we want to allow for extension if they need it. We also said that there's 15 to 30 minutes reserved for the whole group, knowing that in kindergarten and 1st grade, that whole group comprehension is going to be a smaller chunk of time because the focus is on the foundational skills. Now, our core plan from this year didn't incorporate phonemic awareness with Hegarty, but we purchased that as an intervention. But where we're seeing it and where we'll amend this when we submit again next year is it will be in our core plan, because it already is in our core plan. That's not a change. Our teachers are putting that 10 to 15 minute lesson every day.
And they love it.
Yeah, this is our 2nd year using Hegarty. I'm Christina May, I'm the principal at Castle Hayne. We implemented Hegarty in K1 last school year. And one of the things that has come from letters training is I mean, that's kind of where that started.
Yes.
But I think our teachers see the connection since they're doing letters, and we implemented Haggerty before they started letters. So now they definitely see the value. And they've seen how beneficial it has been for the students. Like, for example, our first grade team last year didn't start Haggerty until after Christmas break. But they saw so much growth from Christmas break until the end of the year in the students' phonemic awareness that they were excited to start it this year at the very beginning of the year. So I think it's great when what we're doing aligns with letters and science of reading. It just solidifies the purpose of the work.
Yeah.
And I think that,
No, go ahead, Ms.
I
Moore.
apologize. I think that speaks to the power of the team we created, because Christiane was one of the folks on our team. And so she was,
too.
oh, and Jordan, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, Jordan. But like, they were able to, they had already started implementing Haggerty. They were able to say, we believed that was the right thing, but to have it in our buildings and say, we're seeing it already, was so powerful to like what we put in this plan. And I'm sorry, Dr. Faison.
No. I was just gonna point out, because I don't want our teachers out here, because I know how they love Haggerty and foundations. Anything that we adopt will be fitting into that. I want everybody to know that, because I know that is working for us. It's the one thing that's really keeping us where we are, right? And we all know that. So we definitely are not talking about that, elementary teachers. We're not talking about letting that go. We've heard you. We know you value that. And I just want to make sure that that's said.
And it's been
Trying to get in front of me before I get up here and talk.
I know we're talking so much about it, and I know how they love it, and I want to, but I'm sorry.
Well, and it's just been so affirmed in letters. They're actually seeing teachers teach foundations, and so that has been
Right.
like it's affirmed that we've made a good decision and why we chose that. So the other just piece of curriculum, the other thing that we do ask for them to block out time is a minimum of 30 minutes for small group instruction, because we want to be responsive to student needs. And so that instruction can focus on phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary comprehension, building, depending on the needs of the students. We have, Boer will talk a little bit more about the resources available, but one of the ones that's on that list is GEODS, and GEODS is, it's not a decodable text, but 80 to 90% of the text is decodable. They call them readable because the other 10 to 20% is knowledge building, and that makes it different. And we're really glad that our students have the opportunity to read real books that are engaging, that they've really enjoyed as they've gotten into them. And so, and then third grade looks really similar, except, you know, we have the minimum to 30 minutes for whole group in explicit phonics, but then we say we know that they're also tested, and so we've got to spend that 90 minutes in content or unit-based literacy with whole groups and small group instruction, really focusing on those standards. And while this year we have reading fundamentals, we're really talking about the standards as we plan in PLCs. We are making sure that what we do is standard aligned, and we've created some standard document and standard unpacking document and guidance to support our teachers in that process this year. And then you can see just the other details about teacher-student ratio, instruction, but all of it is about being responsive and reflective to our students' needs.
One question. What would you tell a parent that's listening, the one thing that you would ask them to do to help us at home?
Well, I think the first thing is speak to the child's teacher, right? So reach out to your child's teacher. Right now that we're in the middle of year testing, and so we're going to get data from our DIBELS and MClass assessments about at risk for reading deficiencies. And so if your child's green or blue, that means they are not currently at risk. But if they're yellow or red, they're at risk for a reading deficiency. And there's lots that we're doing at school to support that. We want our families to also know the resources available to them. We send home a Home Connect letter with that to give guidance on ways that they can support them at home. But we also have lots of other ways for them to access support. So first and foremost, our teachers are the experts, and they know their child the best. And just so you know, too, 4th and 5th grade, DPI didn't require us to create, they weren't included in our literacy plan, but we knew we needed to include 4th and 5th grade in our plan. And so Dr. Faison asked us to create a best practices for classroom instruction document, and this just shows you what we've laid out for 4th and 5th grade, which really looks similar to what you see in 3rd grade, minus we don't have systematic phonics instruction there, but you can see a minimum of 30 minutes for reading comprehension, for small group, and then for writing as well.
And so then the next part of our plan is the rest of what's in your packet. This is actually linked, is the intervention piece. So the first page really speaks to what the instruction should look like, as far as it should be systematic, explicit. There should be a lot of modeling for our students. And then the rest of the pages, I want to just talk about how they're broken up. You will notice that it says K1 phonemic awareness and phonics. And so that kind of lets you know the skill that would be being taught for a group. And then you have supplemental tier 2, or that should say intensive tier 3. I'll get that fixed. But what we're saying is this is what we would do for a group of students who are getting a tier 2 or supplemental intervention on phonemic awareness and phonics. And this is how we would intensify that plan if we saw that the data indicated that the students weren't growing the way that we expected them to. We utilize our in-class data to make those determinations, but we also make those determinations in a group so that we make sure that not one person is making decisions, but we're looking at the data as a group and we're responding based on what our students need.
I think the other thing that's important for parents who are listening to hear is that decision is not based on one data point. I mean, there's a lot of data that we look at at different pieces of the picture that the child brings, and so we want to be careful, that we're not labeling or putting students in a group based on just one day, one test. It's based on a really comprehensive picture.
Right, right. And then the other thing I did just want to mention, while it does say K1 phonemic awareness phonics, we do know, and based on what we need to make decisions for students, is if we know a kid's struggling with phonemic awareness, we're not going to not intervene because they're not in K or 1. We will absolutely hit that skill first because we know that there are a hierarchy of skills, and then we will go into the next area for those students. So this is broken up. Again, this is a K3 document. However, our 4-5 teachers can very much use this. One of the things that we did as a team is we did streamline a lot of the things that our schools were using because there are a lot of great resources out there. However, some of them do not align with the science of reading. Some of them don't necessarily have a scope and sequence the way that the state would like. So we did streamline, and I think that was a harder shift for some of our schools and some of our teachers, just because they had positive experiences with some of the other resources out there. But we really asked them to try to maintain and be within this document. And then what we're going to do, because this is a live document and we will be submitting each year, is we will ask for feedback as we go into next school year and start revising our plan to see, are there things we need to look at as a team and add to strengthen this plan.
And I think it's important, one of the other reasons we streamlined our interventions is because we have a very transient population in our district, and we want to make sure that if an intervention is working at Alderman and they move to Castle Hayne, that student still has access to that intervention and that support. And so that was really important to us, and we'll continue to add to those toolboxes schools have available to them. And so lastly, we really just also want to talk, we know that our literacy intervention plan can live on the paper, but truly it's got to come alive in our classrooms and in our schools and with our teachers. And so this just shows you just a snippet of the literacy support that we're offering across the district this year. And so we've spoken about letters. We've got letters going on pre-K and elementary for all of our certified staff, but also our administrators as well. We've had training in the programs that are listed, so foundations, Hegarty, and geodes, because we know we have new staff coming all year long. We're also trying to open up on work days some just optional PD offerings. So we did some geodes planning, some small group planning on the November election day, because that was something our teachers were saying they needed extra support with. So that's something that we're continuing to add to and will continue to offer throughout the year.
I think the other thing is as we sort of transition out of letters, as the bulk of our teachers finish up letters, next year we'll have a lot more opportunities to continue their learning without so many days designated.
Yeah, because the learning's not going to be done.
Exactly.
It's about moving all of that learning into the classroom, and so we've got to continue to offer support for our teachers for practical ways to move that into practice with our students, and that's truly what we're here for, and that's our goal. We have monthly instructional coach and MTSS coordinator meetings and trainings. We do a lot of that and do it in a way so that our coaches and coordinators can turn it around and implement it with their staff. We offer walkthroughs and feedback, and then we also attend a lot and support a lot of PLCs, and that's helpful for us to learn how to put this learning into practice. And so that's our favorite place to be in the schools. And then we do a lot of data reviews. So we've got core planning.
Core planning, right now we are getting ready to get into that season. As Maureen said, we do MOI, beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year, where we are collecting data on our students using our universal screeners. We take that data along with the other data sources we have, like our foundations, trackers, like our, depending on what grade level, if we're doing Mastery Connect, our NC check-ins, not that we're talking about math right now, but also our Eureka data that we collect. And we use that to say, okay, what does the health of our core look like? And we have some data decision rules where, depending on what the health of our core looks like, we may make some decisions as a team to intervene at the core level, if that's what the grade level needs. Or we may make decisions where, okay, we feel like our core is healthy, but we also need to now look at the individual student level as a grade level, and all of our grade levels do that after they look at that core piece. So we do that. Our schools are finishing up assessing right now, so they will be reviewing that data in the next couple of weeks. Maureen made some amazing literacy profiles for every single elementary school in our district that she made them at the end of last school year with the data so that we could go into the beginning of this school year, because the kids that are coming to us are not a mystery. We know what skills they know and what skills they don't know. And we know that over the summer, sometimes they lose a little bit of those skills. So we wanted to come into the school year proactively, and so that our schools could, if they needed to make some adjustments in that foundations time, they could make those adjustments. She also provided PD for teachers, not teachers, but instructional coaches and MTSS coordinators to come together after BOY data to build their own, to add on to those literacy profiles. And we'll be doing that again at our February coach meeting. And then, like she said, we love to join PLCs to look at those data reviews and offer that support that way. So we're continuing that work.
Yeah, we know that we've got to really be mindful of the data and make sure that we're responding to it at a district level, but at a school and a classroom level as well. And so
I think we've got some great data to share too.
Yeah, we do. So I just wanted to end just by kind of sharing where we are. And this is last year's end of year DIBELS proficiency comparison. And it takes a look at our district is in the light blue. And then we have the national and the state average as well for the end of year proficiencies. And I really want everyone to pay attention to kindergarten. Our kindergartners came in below the national and state average. We came in below, but we ended up above. And so 70% of our kindergartners left last year at a low risk for reading deficiencies. And that is a complete work of our school administrators and our kindergarten teachers and the support staff in our school and
our pre-K teachers
and
our ready for kindergarten.
Yes, and so many people made that possible, and we're just really excited about where do we take that cohort of students now, right? If they're leaving at 70% proficient at the end of last year, and you can see that in every grade level we were above actually the national and state proficiency for every single grade level, and every year will continue to rise. Now this is beginning of the year, and I just wanted to compare where we were 21 and 22 versus this current school year, just so you guys can see the growth that we made too. We know the summer slide is real. We know it's a real thing. We're trying to mitigate that with our TA camp, but we've still got a lot of work to do in that area. But just looking at our kindergarten and looking at our first grade, and we're going to be looking very closely at middle of the year to make sure that those graphs are all going up. And if not, what can we do to support those kids? Because that goal of 90%, 2027 is going to be here soon, but we want to reach that goal way before. if possible.
And this data is beginning of the year data.
Yes,
Not
for
where
the
the
school
not where
year.
we expect students to be at the end of this school year. I'm going to open up for any questions and comments. Short questions and comments because I want to get us out of here in a timely fashion. But anything we want to add? Thank y'all so much for your work on all this, and thank you to the teachers too who carry out this vision. So this is kind of a continuation of the same conversations we've been having that around literacy, that we know some of what we have is working really well, and some of what we have for literacy is not working really well. So this particular conversation centers around kindergarten through 8th grade, in preparation of getting kids ready for AP and dual enrollment, in preparation of getting kids ready for career and college readiness. We know that vertical alignment is really important. So we heard overwhelmingly from teachers that what we have in school-wide is not working. We surveyed our teachers, over 450 of them responded and overwhelmingly said, no, this is not working for us and we need something different. And that was across the board, from classroom teachers, departmentalized teachers, AIG, like they work in our schools, they were loud and clear that school-wide is not working for them. And so this timeline kind of shows what we're doing to help address those concerns from teachers. We've already did the survey. We created a request for proposal, which is a public document that goes out that says, you know, companies out there, this is what New Hanover needs. If you meet it, let us know that you've got that. And we submitted that RFP. It's publicly available, but also we particularly sent it out to all programs that we know are green on ed reports, which means outside entities have looked at it and also said these are high quality programs. So we made sure they got access to it too, to say, hey, we're looking, if your program meets our needs for our students, we're interested to hear what you have and to see if that would be a fit for our students. So that's kind of where we are in the process right now, and where I need a little bit of your help as a committee in making some decisions. Those requests for proposal will be due, and we'll go through our purchasing office, and then we'll have some vendor fairs. We're going to make sure every teacher voice is heard. Every teacher will get a chance to vote. And then once we have that information, we'll look at contracts and make sure the tech specs work and all the behind the scenes things that need to happen. But our teachers also were really clear in the survey about what they wanted in a curriculum. You know, alignment to the standards, thinking about building knowledge, usability, text quality, alignment to the science of reading. And so Ms. Meehan handed out for you this appendix, which is just a short, the RFP is really long, it's like 50 pages. So I just printed out this appendix for you, which has the rubric. The rubric was created on what the teachers wanted, as well as what we know are best practices for literacy based on the research that is out there. And then, again, this is what the teachers said. I'll give you a minute to read over it. But overwhelmingly what they wanted, and you will see exactly what they wanted became our matrix for what we're looking for. Any questions on the process before I come to the team with some decisions to make?
Do you feel like there's enough time to get a good variety of proposals?
Yeah, so the proposals were posted January 7th or 8th, something like that. I can't remember the exact date. And so companies have over a month. And we've already heard back from quite a few companies that they are ready and able to answer our call. We're a big county and people want our business, but we're only going to give our business to somebody who meets exactly what our students need. Yeah.
And who will be utilizing the scorecard?
Well, that is part of the decisions to make here. So what will happen is once we get proposals back, I anticipate, I mean, this is just a rough estimate, right? We could have 100 people give us proposals, we could have 5, right? I anticipate we're going to have somewhere between 10 and 15. So the committee that we have in place now is a group of myself, some of the lead teachers, as well as teachers who are in buildings, instructional coaches that are in buildings that were recommended by principals, recommended by lead teachers who have a history of success, and then also showed some interest in being on this committee. So it's not a representation from every single school building, because we just can't justify taking, that many people out of the classroom to look at it, but it's going to be a well-rounded, multilingual will be represented, AIG, all the groups will be there to use the scorecard to do that. So the first step is just to make sure, do they meet our basic qualifications? Like, are they worthy of even looking at? And then kind of scoring them from here. But what we need to decide is, how many finalists do we then want to put in front of teachers for everybody to look at? There's a balance. We want teachers to see as much as possible, but we also don't want to overwhelm teacher time, because we want them to have an opportunity. They will likely get some demo lessons, they'll get some samples. We want them to try some things out. So you can't test out 20 different products, right? So, 2 to 3 is generally what other districts do, but we don't have to do what other districts do. We want to do what's right for us. So I guess that's kind of the first question is, particularly teachers who are on this committee, what is a reasonable amount to not be overwhelmed, but to make sure you have a good sense of the options for you, or principals.
I think 3 to 5.
Yeah, we were just saying around 3.
I think teachers can look at the curriculum or the teacher resources that are provided and very quickly tell whether, whether, and the other thing is, I think there's been so much curriculum adoption lately that teachers may not have felt that they had a voice in, that it was just, here's what you're going to do. Yeah. That I think if they have several things to choose from.
Right. We want their voices heard. They're the ones who are going to be implementing it, for sure.
And can look and see what is going to be the best option for them and for their students.
Yeah.
One thing that I love what Dr. Walt has says, and I want to make this very clear, is that we do not necessarily, be perfect for the district, but it's not what's perfect for the district, what's perfect for students. We do not necessarily have to do the same elementary and middle.
Oh, that's a good point.
I think that is really
And
good to
she has
hear.
said that
That's a good
over, and
What's best for our second graders might not be best for our eighth graders.
And it's
That's
not
really good to
perfect
hear.
for us, but it's not about us, right?
Right.
It's about our teachers and our students. We'll have to make it work.
Right.
So I think that's important for our middle schoolers to know, because sometimes they think
Thank you for saying
we do
that.
not adopt things based on their needs, and it's a different world sometimes for what they need.
I know another concern from teachers a lot of times is, okay, what happens after we choose the curriculum? Are we going to also receive the professional development and all of the pre-work that needs to go along with it as well? So I think that's also going to be
I did not
in the presentation to teachers.
Yeah, I wish, I did not even pay you to say all this, but you'll see the last thing on the appendix is each vendor who's coming to us has to share with us their implementation plan. What's their plan for ongoing support? Because we know it can't just be a one and done at the start of school. So that is part of what they have to submit to us, is what do they offer ongoing?
Well, and I think as a district, too, we have to have, though the company is going to have an implementation plan, I think we also have to have a rollout plan that is very, very strategic, because it may not make sense to implement the same thing K-5. It may be, maybe we want to look at a rolling.
And I think those decisions have to be based on what we end up deciding to
Right.
adopt, right? Like,
Right.
we can't necessarily as a committee make that decision right now, because we don't, it could depend on what I'm looking for. Oh, I want to make sure that I lift your voice too, since remind me what grade you?
We're pre-K.
Pre-K.
Yes.
Pre-K. Can I just kind of lift your voice too, to make sure that sort of what we're presenting in terms of adoption carries forth what y'all envision
I
for
was
teachers?
just making some notes over here that this is very important to have teachers' voices. We've recently just rolled out a lot of stuff, and teachers were very, very overwhelmed, along with starting letters cohort 1 and then having Hegarty, Eureka, and Foundations all on top of our core curriculum. And so to hear that there is a plan to have teachers' voices heard to make decisions just brings joy to my heart.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to just say about the PD, we are really being strategic about, the PD is essential. We are not. I know funding and the money's going to be tight, so it's going to be hard. But we're putting funding for PD. We cannot get a quality curriculum and don't train people on how to do it. It just can't happen, right? So we're doing that. So I would also say to principals, and I know most of you don't have a lot of money, but I would also say to you, if there, as you're thinking about your budgeting, right, for the next year, you know this new adoption is coming out, anything that you can, for your PD money, think about that as well. Because we're gonna roll something out, but it's not the same as having something that's tailored for your school that you can do. So I would just throw that out as well.
I think that's kind of brings me to the second question that I wanted to bring to the table too, and I'm glad y'all have rolled up some curriculum too, because it all kind of fits together, is, we want to have teacher voices. It's a balance between not overwhelming them. So this, the first group will have representation, but not from every school. Ultimately, we do want every school to be part of the process, and so having a committee, does it make sense to have a committee where every school sends 2 to 3 people? I mean, what would you all kind of like that to look like? I want the vendor fairs personally to be open to all teachers to attend, whether or not you're on a committee, because if we ultimately ask you to teach it,
You need to be able to look at
I
it.
want you to have seen it, whether that vendor fair is in person, after school, on a Saturday. So that was kind of the other thing, was logistics. I'd like to offer as many as possible. I don't want to require teachers to come to something on a Saturday, but I want as many opportunities for them to get their hands on the materials, to talk to the people who know about that program as possible.
I would say opening it to all teachers to attend, and then having like a representative from each school that they can provide feedback to bring to the selection committee.
Or multiple, maybe they have a rep from
K2
each
and
grade or
K5.
something.
Yeah, maybe a
Yeah, that would
K2,
be a good
K5.
idea.
And
K2
I'm
K2,
just going
K5,
to piggyback on Ms. Meehan. I definitely agree that you should have, I remember back in the day with the teacher fair, we had it in, it seemed like they were in our building, I don't know how they did that, maybe not. But we could all go through and look at that material. I would wonder if we could have some stations strategically placed throughout the district,
Yeah.
right?
think we
So at a
We can ask them to do whatever we want.
Right, they want money, right. So
Yeah,
that
great
way,
idea.
and if we can do that and do that a couple of maybe after work,
Yeah.
and that way teachers would have that opportunity along with the virtual fair.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do a Saturday, I just don't see many
No,
people doing
I
a Saturday.
gonna say,
I don't
I
even
like
want,
to
I don't even want my
protect
teachers to think that we want them to work on a Saturday, so I don't know about that, but I'll.
Yeah.
Is that consensus, no Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay.
No Saturday.
Also regionally, if you have vendor fairs regionally, because Castle Hayne and Carolina Beach are very, very far apart.
Right,
So if there's a
Like
northern.
College Road traffic's no joke.
Yeah, right. If there's a northern region vendor fair and a southern region
Right.
vendor fair.
Yeah.
yeah.
That'd be great.
And let's
I
let's
think it
ask
can-
our vendors to have snacks, because they want our money to have
Yes,
snacks.
that'd be great.
Snacks, noted.
I'll volunteer my building. My building can be used.
Noted.
Can I address
Absolutely.
the number of vendors in the RFP? My experience has been, no matter how many ask, one's going to drop out, to factor that into what you're doing. And if transparency and teachers' voices are important, go with more.
Yes, I agree.
That they're buying in.
Okay.
And it's going to be that much easier on you.
So you're saying more than 3?
Yeah, I'm literally thinking 5.
That was
You know,
great.
if one drops out, you've got
Yeah.
4. So if you went to 6, then one drops out, you got 5. But one, I mean, I do the same thing with hiring. I will have 3 candidates because I know one of them's going to drop out. It's just Murphy's Law. It's just the way it is. So if you plan for that, then you're not stuck and you don't have enough people to interview.
I think.
And
that's right.
again, with the RFPs, if you don't get a good one, if they send you an email, forget it. It's the people who take the effort to do the RFP. As a
Absolutely.
company, we always put out RFPs because we've been following government for so long, and it was amazing, the companies that just shoot you an email, like, you're out.
Yep.
So you may only end up with a handful.
Yeah. And I think, to that same point, part of the reason we do this, I get emails all the time from vendors saying, hey, try our product, but we're not responding to what vendors. We're saying, here's what we want, here's what our teachers say we want, you meet what we want, not the other way around.
Yeah. And we might not even have 4 or 5
Yeah,
that
we'll
meet the
see.
criteria of
Yeah.
this, right? So that's a very good point.
We'll see, yeah.
Yep, thank you.
I was just going to say, logistically, I really like the idea of having sort of some, geographical sites.
Okay.
And then I think for middle school, most of our teachers have a block of planning time. If these sites were at elementary schools, because it's a little harder for elementary school teachers to get away, but I think if middle school ELA teachers know that, with our blessing, they can go to an elementary during that block of time, you would get a lot of buy-in on our
That's a great idea.
So all day long, it would need, not just after school, but, because planning starts at 8:30 for some teachers and others, is at 3 o'clock, so.
And I definitely think we'd have elementary sites willing to host.
And I just looked,
Sure.
I don't
We've got
know.
one right here.
And I don't know when we'll be prepared to do our vendor fair, but I just looked if there was any way possible. We have a work day in February and we have one in March.
Yep.
If we could have them on those days and have them set up early in the morning, so people can go in the morning they want and let them stay into the afternoon.
Yep.
So just FYI.
Yep, I think we want to have as many as possible throughout February. We want people to have multiple chances to go to a fair, potentially try out some lessons, come back to another fair. Like, the more that they have, the more they feel like they've seen it and gotten their questions answered from the vendors themselves, the better. The last question I have was kind of about voting. So I think there's pros and cons to different, right? You could do a one teacher, one vote. You could do a one teacher, one vote, and then the principal makes a vote on behalf of the school. We can do some some ranked choice, and what are your top 2 choices? We know not everybody's going to get their top choice. That's, when you have a district this size, not every teacher's going to get their first choice, but we want as many teachers as possible to have one of their top choices. And also I think, we want higher voting rates if they feel like their voices are actually going to be heard and valued. So I guess my question to you really is, what do you think about having teachers give their top 2 choices? And then we would also sort of aggregate the data and say, for your school, here's how your teachers voted. So you would know how your school voted, and then we'd also have a picture overall of how all teachers voted.
Or would you rather, as a principal, do that in-house and provide us your information?
So one of the things that I think the best decisions come after conversation, right? So I think if we have teachers that are voting and we just rely on a vote by number, teachers may not have an opportunity to have really productive dialogue about the pros and cons of each program.
Each school needs to have a discussion.
I like the idea of having representatives from the school, K2, 3, 5, whatever, and instructional coaches come and even if they have the school's preference or the teacher's preference from their school, and they bring that to the meeting, and then there's that productive dialogue in that forum, I think you're going to make a better decision than if you just do, here's 3 options, everybody pick, okay, we're going to pick the one that has the highest number of votes.
So you're saying each school would have the discussion within their staff meeting, they would talk as their staff, they would send their representatives who would then be part of the district conversation around that.
Agreed.
I love that. One of the things that I would want to make sure is that all principals are making sure that this is something that is being held in their school. That's why I just throw this out to you about having the principal partnering with the person. Sorry?
I was just gonna, could we also be a part of that?
You didn't let me finish my time, but I was saying that. That's what I was saying. I think the principal should partner there. Right, we're reading right here. You did one of my numbers. That's usually me that does that. So the principal partnering there, because what we don't want, and I'm not saying any principal would do this, but we don't want that 2 people are speaking for a school and the teachers did not have a voice. So I think I love the partnership with the principal and the representative coming and making sure their votes are heard. And when you come to the table, though, you're saying that we've talked to our collective body. And this is what they want.
And I think it's helpful if you come with the dialogue, but if you also come with a numbers vote, right? I think you need both.
I think we should have that, just because I think that does tell, that shows us trends or preferences to lead the conversation, not saying that number is the magic number, but I do think we need to have the numbers behind it, because if our teachers chose this, we need to listen to that overwhelming.
And the most important thing that we don't want to have happen is we don't want people to walk into this thinking that the decision has already been made.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We do not want that.
I think that's a
Yeah.
common sentiment, that,
Yeah.
that they think that, well, what's the point of voting, or I guess I'll vote, it's probably gonna do whatever they want anyway.
Yeah.
I also think that teachers and administrators recognize that this is one of the most important decisions that we will be making.
Yes.
And it is a huge, huge, huge decision, especially, and I think we have learned a lot in the last couple of years about rolling out new curriculum and good ways of doing that, and then maybe some ways that we should rethink how we roll out new curriculum. So I think it is important for principals and lead teachers to be at the table for that discussion.
And I would say, when going back to Mrs. Hill's comment, it seems like we probably would need to make sure we have, like, whatever way we vote, it is clear and we can really see that we see everybody's voice.
Yeah.
So ultimately, this group is coming in here, but you see, because you could get there, right? And you say, well, we voted for Faison's curriculum, but you see that the teachers it's like one or two teachers off, and when it gets in the grand scheme and we're all here together, that might have a factor.
Right, right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Well, the other benefit is that then whoever's in that meeting can come back to the school and they can provide the
Yep.
justification
Right,
for why.
here's why.
Yeah, the why.
I think the meetings at your individual schools are really key. You're gonna have to do that and make them robust and get a lot of buy-in. And even if their choice doesn't ultimately end up being the one, if they've had a voice in the process, it's gonna go a lot better.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also think it's important that they have time to collaborate across schools though too, because for example, at my school where my 5th grade ELA teacher is a body of one.
Yeah.
She
needs
needs
to
that
hear.
opportunity to talk to other fifth grade ELA teachers.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so I think we have to have a both
Yeah.
there.
We have to figure out too, that's a very good point, Ms.
Yeah.
Sun.
And even providing like each school with a Google form that has this rubric on it, that has an exit ticket of the meetings that are happening on site, you know, they could get a visual of what parts of each curriculum, you know, do they think is strongest and weakest.
Yeah.
So not as a whole, but if something's standing out about this one that you really love, what is it about this one? And, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just did a thing where we judged 23 deals, and by about 10, I was like, oh my gosh. But I had that notes column where I could say, you know, this was this and this was this, so I could go back and
to it.
reflect. Because if you're walking around a room, you know, I don't know, I used to have this rule, always have just your top 3. Just keep it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and if you add one, if you bring a new one in to be first place, then something has to go. So you're always holding out with your top 3, and it seemed to work better for me.
Thank you all for your feedback on that. I'm sure there will be more questions that come up, and I will probably be emailing the whole committee to get some feedback on things. In looking forward, you know, once a decision has been made, it is a kind of a multiple month process. Eventually, we do want to take it to the curriculum committee so that this group can say to the board, here's our final recommendation. Our next meeting's not till May, so it is very possible that we will do some email work back and forth so that it can be brought to the board, you know, before May. Because the idea is we want the materials in June for our year-round schools to be able to get started on that and for professional development to begin.
Can we get the other dates on the calendar sooner than later,
Yes.
just so that we can prepare accordingly?
Yep, absolutely. And we will definitely follow up with this. You know, this is not the end of the conversation here. This will be at our next meeting and via emails from me. Principals are probably sick of me already talking about it, but you're going to continue to hear from me at every principal meeting about this.
Another thing just to consider too, when you talk with the vendors, is making sure that they will be able to get everything in on time.
Oh.
So that we are not.
Very good.
Absolutely.
And our restart schools, we have to think about our restart,
Yes. And
exactly.
that's why materials have to be received by June.
Yes.
Because restarting year-round,
Right.
they've got to have it in order to be able to do it. And again, that committee will be all schools represented. We'll have EC representation. We'll probably have pre-K representation there. We'll have, you know, AIG. All the stakeholders will be represented in that group as we're making these decisions. Are there any other? I know we're over time here by about 15 minutes, but are there any other questions that we have before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's 3:45 to 5:15.
Oh, I thought it was 5
Look
o'clock,
at you,
so
yeah.
perfect. We are right on time, if anybody have any questions, as we wrap up. Okay, so our next session is currently set for May 22nd. And I put a note that we want maybe CTE to do some information there. Is there anything else that you'd like me to put on the agenda for our May meeting? Other than update on the adoption?
Can I say a little more? One of the goals of the newly elected board members is career readiness. We're really intent on that. Our goals are to graduate more students and to increase literacy. So I don't know if y'all know, but the other night at the board meeting, we did a little exercise where we took little stickies and put them on a board, but we ranked our top 6 priorities on the strategic plan, and academics moved up into first place. Second place was safety, and third place was teachers and administrators. So got a shift in what our direction's going to be, so I think you'll all be pretty excited about that. My number one thing is literacy, so I love you guys.
We got the best of the best right here.
For a partnership and a board that values the work that we're doing and will uplift it to keep it moving forward.
Yeah, it's a ticket out of any issue. For me, as a child, they didn't have reading deficiency labels. They just knew something was wrong with me. And when reading opened up to me, it became an escape. But I can remember that summer school, and I hated it. It was hot. There was no air conditioning back then. And I lived in North Florida, and I hated being there. But all of a sudden, for a kid who couldn't read, all of a sudden I'm reading in pictures. And there's no question in my mind that I'm excellent in what I do for a living because of that summer school program. It opened up the whole world to me. And I read in pictures. I do it different. I read differently than y'all do, but I read in those pictures. But now I create in pictures, and that makes what I do so extraordinary out there in the public. So I'm very grateful for summer school programs that you force children to come to. I am.
Yes, we do too.
Thank y'all for being part of this committee. We appreciate you.
Oh, Ms. Bradford, one thing, we will be looking at the committee and the makeup of the committee, remember we discussed at our May meeting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we will.
nothing scary.
No, but we just want to talk to you guys
about.
about who's on the committee, how should we have people on the committee?
Which committee?
This committee.
Oh,
Okay?
One of the things,
I thought you meant the adoption committee.
no, one of the things the board has on the agenda to consider is how people get on committees and to unify it across the board. So if this person out in the public wants to be on a committee, it's the same for every committee that we have. The process is very streamlined and very transparent. There's the accusation that there's no transparency, and we're really hard on that one. So for me, knowing how long you've been on this committee and why you're on it, it's nothing. It's just a housekeeping thing.
Yeah, and then two, how do we get some community people involved in
Yeah,
this
and can the
committee?
public come? And
Right.
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of former school teachers out there that would love to come and put some input. I hear from them constantly.
So think about that when you come back. Think about the roles of this committee, who should be on this committee, how long should they be, and more importantly, how do we get more community involvement with the committee? Because really, we want to hear from the community. This is the time for them to dig in and tell them, this is what we want from a curriculum, this is the expectations we have, and we can get that from them. Okay? Now, Dr. Jawad.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much. I hope you have a great evening.
Miss Hill, Miss Boer, I want to
And Miss-
introduce you to the lady that's gonna be on us for literacy. You're right there. Yeah. The lady's gonna be on us.
Oh, yeah, you guys are going to